way that is rather embarrassing. I don't know what is going on right now. Apparently, I have to put my output resolution to 720 by 480, and that has caused these black bars to appear next to the current video that you're seeing. So that is very lovely. Yeah, things can never go my way, can I? But aside from that, what I want to talk about was kind of a year-end review and a prospect. I believe that's the right word. Prospect of things to come for 2019. So I just want to thank to anyone who's watching this, whether it be live or or on the VOD. I want to thank the people who have watched my streams, my content, my videos, for who have watched throughout the past year. You know, uh, I started this kind of as a just last minute ditch thing in February of this year in the to cover Minnesota special elections for their state house and their state senate, and it was pretty crude. In fact, I believe the if you go back to that first video, um, you go back to that first video of that stream, you'll see first of all the output with the black bars. I believe those are there because technology is not really my speciality. And you'll see I basically just had pictures, so to speak. I had pictures, just kind of a crude slideshow type of thing, and I had to. My first stream of this type was not good. It's basically what I want to spit out. Um, yeah, it was kind of crude. So then, after that stream, uh, I decided to say, "Hey, this was kind of fun. I should do it again." And then the next stream was it was of a Florida special election for their state house, I believe, and then Oklahoma state legislature special election. And so yeah, I basically decided to cover that, and I thought, hey, I like this. This is kind of fun. So then, next thing I know, I decided to up the ante with a with a new interface, so to speak. I kind of learned how OBS works, and I kind of made a main hub interface with a ticker below of called races. And then throughout and out, as I kept doing this, I guess you could say I kept upping the ante on the quality of the streams. I believe the fourth stream I did was of a Wisconsin special Supreme Court election, and two other state legislator elections. And that's where I got the idea of trying to have a moving background, like the star background that you currently will see here. And so I kept upping the ante, and basically, as time went on, I sort of kind of kept upgrading the quality of the feeds. Like you'll see here, I have different transitions, different interfaces, so to speak. um, and I believe I don't think I've added too much now, so to speak. Um, Hello, Mr. Pumpkin. I'm kind of just giving a year-end look back of how far the channel has become. I guess this could be considered sort of a podcast, so to speak. I'm basically just rambling on to myself, and if anyone just happens to pop in, then hello, and this VOD will be up later. But yeah, the the as I look back as to how far the channel's been going, at the beginning of this year, I had like what 17 subscribers, and that was just from a few friends from way long ago who decided to sub to my channel because I posted some video type content that it was really crude, but so yeah, and then fast forward to today where I have about 366 subscribers, which which to which to people is piddly. It's like, oh, 366 subscribers. That's little, but to me, I thank each and every one of those subscribers who decided that my dog crap type of content was worthy of their view. So I thank them for that. It, I really, from the bottom of my heart, feel blessed that people tune into my live streams when they can. They watch my videos. In fact, the last video I put up was a complication of the 2018 midterms, and that has about 23,000 views. I'm really shocked at how well that one is doing. Um, but I guess that's just the type of content that I want to make, because you look at different places, you'll see, like, from time to time, I've found complications of like the presidential elections, midterm elections, but like there was a 2012 presidential complication of the results, but it only showed the states, and I was like, I could probably make this better, and I did. That was a previous video where I did the presidential elections from 2012, the state presidential races, but also the Senate races, some House races, and the governor's races that I could find from MSNBC's, and I decided to put a complication of that. I could probably make it to, in fact, that actually brings it to a good point. I'm currently working on an MSNBC 2014 midterm compilation. I could probably do a CNN compilation, but I don't know. I just feel I just have more fun and feel more motivated when I do MSNBC compilations, because as you can see here, my graphics that I may or may not have stolen maybe from MSNBC, because I love their music, I love the graphics, and I just like putting together complications from that. And all in that. Yes, you are, pumpkin. In fact, it's actually funny. It's actually harder to find old election coverage from CNN. Like I can't, like, there's some, I believe there's a few videos of like 2 hours from CNN's 2008 coverage, but that's about it. I can't find any full coverage from 2008 from CNN, nor full coverage from CNN from 2012. I can't find any of that. 2016 you can find, but trying to find footage from 2008, 2010 from CNN, or 2008, 2012 election coverage from CNN, that is a rare rarity. I would be shocked to find full election coverage from those years from CNN. MSNBC, on the other hand, is you can pretty much find 2004. There actually are videos on YouTube. 2006. Can't find it. That is a there. I could barely find any footage from 2006 from either CNN or MSNBC, and I would love to find footage from MSNBC, full coverage from 2006, but but getting off track here. But going back to what I was saying, the I've always liked, and I've done videos from 2008, 2012, 2016, presidential election years, compilation results that I include the governors, the House races, and the Senate races, if there are calls, and I try to the best of my ability. In fact, if you go to my video of the 2008 compilation from MSNBC, You go back. I actually trying to find footage from Indiana, Missouri, Montana calls from MSNBC is hard, and as you'll see, there's actually I had to find videos of people who recorded it basically like a camcorder recording of it. Um, but going back to what I was saying, those type of videos I really, really like. I like putting those together. I love elections. That's kind of the whole background. What always frustrated me, and this is, I guess this is going. Thank you, Pumpkin. I appreciate you tuning in here, watching my crap content. As you can see, the feed is kind of fricked because black bars. I tried doing this. Well, I wouldn't exactly call myself a historian. There are pretty much better election historians, but I just like the coverage. As you could, I appreciate all of you who tune in. But going back, the reason why I thought it'd be a fun idea to try this back in February of this year, because I was always frustrated, and I was actually, when covering the state special elections, I was a little frustrated that, local television wasn't covering these special elections like in Missouri. Earlier this year there were 4 special elections for the state legislature in Missouri, and I would have thought maybe the local news will have maybe like a mini election coverage because it's 4 special elections. So I thought maybe they'll have a ticker at the bottom. Nope. From what I found, most of the news stations weren't actually live. Their broadcasting schedule did not line up to when those polls closed. So I thought that was a little frustrating. In fact, where I live in Los Angeles, I believe there's only one news station in Los Angeles that actually has news coverage from 8 to 11, which is a good chunk of when polls close our time. But I was frustrated that these states, their news stations don't do that. I thought it would be a fun idea to cover these Minnesota special elections because no one else would bother to cover them in the extent that I would want them to be, like with news tickers, like constant updates, like from headquarters and stuff. So, I'm trying to put that together, Pumpkin. It's been a very frustrating past few months for reasons I'll get into later, but yeah, so that kind of inspired me to do this. That's like hey, no one else does it, so I'll do this for the few people who are like me that are interested in this. And as the year progressed, what frustrated me was earlier this year the news stations, because it's an election year, there are primaries. They're like primary nights. MSNBC, I love them, but they would always be like, we have all day coverage of the primaries, like Indiana, West Virginia, and Georgia, these states had primaries, and MSNBC would be like, we'll have nonstop coverage. And it turned out to be a huge crapshoot because on that night was Michael Avenatti. We got interviews and stuff. Both CNN and MSNBC, despite having news tickers at the bottom with the election results, didn't pay attention to them at all. Polls closed on that primary night at 4:00. Chris Matthews, Chris Hayes didn't cover them for the most part during their hours. Rachel Maddow, the one thing that frustrates me her is that she spends like a good out of her entire hour on a night that they advertise as nonstop coverage. She goes on and starts talking about things that are not related to the election. For example, in Pennsylvania, that election night, she spent her entire hour not talking about the Pennsylvania special election. It wasn't until at the very end and transition to Lawrence O'Donnell and Brian Williams, where they actually started covering the special election in Pennsylvania earlier this year. And then again, primary night, the California primary, and then MSNBC did it again on June, I believe it was June 5th. The California June 5th this year was a big primary night. Lots and lots of states had primaries. California being the biggest, Iowa, Alabama, I think South Dakota also had them, and a few other states. Again, they said all-day coverage, and they would have the election graphics, the election ticker at the bottom. I was like, yes. What happens? They don't cover the elections rarely. Rachel Maddow again. It's a big primary night. Iowa, Alabama, South Dakota. Her hour, nothing about the elections. All the while, they have just the ticker at the bottom with election results. That frustrated me. It frustrated me. Fox News, but again, I think Fox News suffered the same. Barely talking about the elections. They'd have election graphics at the bottom with news tickers, but there was they didn't talk about results. Like Steve Kornacki came in every once in a while to talk about the elections, but that was it. Aside from that, nope. Other news that was uninteresting. Even in Brian Williams' time slot, when polls in California did close, barely any talking about the primaries. Barely any talking. CNN, on the other hand, on that night, actually give them credit. They spent a dedicated 2 hours talking about basically nothing but the California primary results, which I respect. But it sucks that MSNBC, a news station I love their election coverage for, and advertised that they'd have all-day election coverage. On those nights, barely anything at all. Well, I believe what you're talking about, the tickers where they showed the results. That's basically just to be constant updates. I mean, which is fine. I like those, but it just frustrates me that you have those results at the bottom of the screen, but and then they would go to different headquarters, go to the big board, but no, they don't do that. And that decided that may, and after seeing that, being frustrated by that through the other half of this year, kind of motivated me to take this. Well, that's a different issue, Pumpkin. It's at least on this election night in November, they actually talked about elections. It's not like, hey, it's election night, but let's talk about the investigation and stuff not related to elections. That is what I hate. It's not about calling races, but they actually made it like what they did, what the news stations did on election night. They talked about the elections. I wanted them to do that for the primaries. Nonstop. This is the one night we can put aside all the Russia news and all that stuff, other stuff, and just talk about elections. But no, despite advertising, they didn't. The South Carolina. Oh, and that's another thing. Well, actually, but that's also another thing. I've noticed that election coverages. I lean very heavily liberal. If you go back to my past broadcasts, you'll see I have a very liberal ideology and my support for a certain party, which would be kind of obvious. But going back, it's more or less, and you'll see this in past election night coverages. They will actually call election results at the bottom of the screen. Like, I believe this year, they called like the New Mexico governor's race at like 9:15, and you'll see it at the bottom of the screen, and it says, and they'll see that the Democrat won in Mexico, but it won't be for like an hour until they actually say like, oh yeah, by the way, we called this race, but that's basically how that works. But just seeing throughout the primaries the media say they're going to have lots of coverage and then not actually do it really frustrated me, and that kind of motivated me to take my channel and do more. earlier in August, my channel, I had said my channel, I would usually only just cover state special elections. One of my favorite election nights, my most proudest one was New York. In April, there were a bunch of New York races for the state Senate and the state House, and that was a big night. That is, if you go back to my videos, that is one of my favorite election night coverages that I've done, and so for like state legislators, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna give trying to stream the Ohio special election and the primaries on the same time, cover the primaries. I did for the most part, but I had to um but I had to cut that stream off short due to a family emergency, so I wasn't able to fully cover those primaries along with the Ohio special election. But that made me think, okay, if the media won't do it, then I'll do it. And so what I've decided going in the future for 2019, I'll mention this right now. You see the governors; these are the governors that the parties hold, and what you'll see next year, 2019, we have 3 governors races up: Louisiana, Kentucky, Mississippi. What I plan to do is I plan to, for the election nights for next year, at the very least, we're going to have some. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the Mississippi primaries, the Kentucky primaries. I'm still wondering what I'm going to do for Louisiana because their primaries are kind of weird, and it would take a lot of manpower to try and set that night up correctly. But I know for sure I am at least going to cover the Mississippi primaries because there are some interesting races in that primary. Jim Hood, the only statewide elected Democrat in Mississippi, going to run for governor. There's going to be a contested primary, so we'll see. On the Republican side, there's going to be a contested primary because the governor's term limited. So we'll see how that primary. I will see how that primary goes. And also, I want to see the primary for the Attorney General, Jim Hood's office, and see what Republicans are going to compete to run for that office. So there are a lot of primary races that I want to cover in a way that the media did not cover them, despite what they'd said. And that's your right, Pumpkin. In fact, on January 8th, there's actually, it's kind of probably a kind of a shout special election. On January 8th, there's Jennifer Wexton, who won United States House seat, is vacating her seat in the state legislature. So there's that. The Democrats are going to try and hold that on January 8th. And also in Georgia, a Republican resigned his seat. So there's going to be a contested special election for that. And what I had said, there has to be at least 2 special elections in one night in order for me to give them an election coverage. If there's just one, then I'm not likely going to cover it. But if there's 2, like Georgia and Virginia, then I'll cover it. So January 8th, I'm going to probably cover those 2. It'll likely not be much change because they're heavily Democrat and heavily Republican special elections, but it'll be a good sign for things to come. And then in February, a bunch of Louisiana special elections for the state legislature. I'm looking forward to that night in February. And then in May is when Kentucky is having their primaries. And as I was saying, Kentucky also has a governor's election this year, along with their other statewide offices, such as the governor, which is contested. Matt Bevin, not having great approval ratings. Democrats, it's a Kentucky governorship is looking like a very if mayoral elections are on the same night or if they're on the same night as an already scheduled election night coverage for special elections, I would maybe cover those. In fact, I think I'll actually get to that. But Kentucky, so they have a governorship. Matt Bevin, prime target for Democrats. I'm going to cover those. The Kentucky primaries are in May. I'll cover those because there's also a contested primary for the governorship and contested primary for the attorney general Andy Beshear, who's Democratic Attorney General, going to run for governor. Let's see who the Republicans and Democrats nominate for that office. Allison Lunderson Grimes, the Secretary of State. She, we'll see if she can. She's a Democrat. We'll see if she can keep her seat. Let's see who the Republicans are nominating on that night. So again, there are a lot of primaries where, and the media is not going to cover those. Then you think MSNBC? In fact, this cycle of elections, gubernatorial elections for Louisiana, Kentucky, and Mississippi, in those election cycles, they get no coverage at all. Oh, believe me, Pumpkin. I'm probably going to be talking for maybe an hour or so right now, just talking about things to come and so. But this cycle of governorships, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Kentucky, you saw in 2017 CNN, MSNBC cover the New Jersey and Virginia special elections, as well as a special House election, so that made that election night. But they covered those like an election night. They had coverage. They had election results at the bottom of the screen. They'd give updates. So they treated those elections as an election night. They treated them the same in 2013. You can look back at past coverage. MSNBC had election graphics. CNN had election graphics for New Jersey and Virginia elections in 2013. And there's not video of it, but I believe they also covered those races in depth in 2009 when Republicans won those both. So those governor elections, those get the election night treatment from the media. But this cycle, you go back to, yes, it also was, and MSNBC and CNN actually called those races. CNN called it. MSNBC just be like at the bottom of the screen, oh yeah, he did. But you go to 2001. If you go to archive.org, which is a fantastic site, it's where I get some of the archives from old election nights, and special election nights. You go to archive.org, you go to the videos, you go to CNN, you go to the date that the Kentucky and Mississippi governorships were up. You can see that they didn't give them coverage at all. No election graphics. They peeked into, I believe, a Mississippi amendment from time to time, but no election graphics, no election coverage. I don't think on archive.org, I don't think you can actually find MSNBC coverage from that night. That's missing. But I assume the same. No coverage of those elections. No, and you go to 2000. You even go to 2015. You go to those election nights. CNN and MSNBC didn't cover those nights like they do the Virginia and New Jersey election nights. In fact, I actually looked back at the footage. Chris Hayes actually was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, Republicans picked up a governorship in Kentucky." Yeah, so he did that, but so yeah, so these, and I'm actually very curious now. I actually wonder if I'm actually going to be a little pissed. Pardon my language. If this happens, but one election night that I'm very looking forward to. I already talked about the primary nights for Mississippi, Kentucky, possibly Louisiana. What I am looking very forward to in 2019 is I'm going to have live coverage of the 2019 elections, the general elections, on November. Let's see here, on November 5th, 2019. That's when the Mississippi governorship and the Kentucky governorship. That's when their general elections are. The media, as I said, rarely covers those elections, unlike the way they cover New Jersey and Virginia on those election nights. So I'm going to give these governorships and any other elections, special elections that are on those nights, the full election night coverage. Meaning we're gonna have election results. We're gonna have projected winners, election tickers at the bottom with results, and everything. Something that these governorships election nights have. They've never had that in treatment, and I'm going to be very mad if for some reason this year or in 2019 if the media decides to finally cover those, because those are actually going to be Mississippi and Kentucky are actually going to be some very competitive races. I'm going to be very mad if there's election night coverage on that night, because that means I have to miss MSNBC cover those and cover this one, and it would be funny because as soon as I decide to cover these, the media does too. But even then, good. I want these elections to get coverage. And also, as you may notice right now, you see there's one vacancy. There is a race in North Carolina you may have heard about in the 9th Congressional District that there's a bit of election fraud. There is likely going to be a special election, a new election for that congressional district in 2019, most likely. And that I will also cover. So I'm going to have general election coverage in November for Mississippi and Kentucky. Louisiana is weird. They have their like I said, Pumpkin. Like I said, it's very rare that the media covers elections. Unlike the election coverage they did for Pennsylvania and Ohio that they did this year. I don't think that they did that for any other old special elections. So it's very likely that they didn't even mention it that night because that race was really competitive. But back to what I was saying, Louisiana is weird. Their open primaries are in October. And if no candidate gets a majority in their respective races, such as the governorship, then they go to a runoff election in November, but it's not at the same time as Kentucky, Mississippi. So, yeah, that's a little frustrating. But like I said, and if there's any big mayoral races on November 5th, I'll also cover those as well as Mississippi and Kentucky governorships. So that election I'm looking very forward to. I'm looking very forward to that, along with any other special elections we find. Like I said, if there's at least two special elections for state legislators races, I'll make sure to cover those. And also on November 5th, 2019, I'll also cover the Attorney General's races for Mississippi and Kentucky, the state Secretary of State race for Kentucky. I'll have election results for those as well. Those races the media doesn't cover at all. So I'm looking very forward to that. And I'm looking forward to the very likely special election for North Carolina that'll probably happen sometime next year. And also possibly special elections for House races in New York and California. Duncan Hunter and Chris Collins, indicted representatives, they might be indicted and be forced out of Congress. So special elections for those races might happen in 2019 as well. So I'll also cover those as well. But so yeah, and of course any potential Senate special elections we'll see. So that's basically what the agenda is for 2019. And as the year goes on, I'll probably talk a lot more about those. But yeah, that's basically what we can look forward to. Like I said again, here you see the governor's races at this hour, the current makeup of the governorships for next year, and then of course Louisiana, Mississippi, and Kentucky. Democrats hold Louisiana, Republicans hold Mississippi and Kentucky. So that's basically the rundown. And in fact, if you want to find out about any special election, you can go to Ballotpedia. They actually have a list of state legislative special elections. State legislative special elections. They have a list of those as well. So 2019 is going to be chock full of elections that the media won't ever cover or give the election night treatment. For Montana, I believe they did. In fact, it's actually funny. The special election for Montana actually happened on my grad night So my high school grad night, we went to Six Flags, and on the bus ride, I kept checking my phone for updates on the New York Times for the results of that race. I looked back at archive.org. CNN and MSNBC, they did cover the races in depth. They had Steve Kornacki at the big board, but I don't think they had election night graphics like at the bottom. For Georgia 6th, the runoff, there's South Carolina and Georgia was actually on the same night, so there were two special elections for the House. MSNBC actually had some decent coverage. They also had lower thirds with the results, which is kind of weird because they looked kind of crappy. You could go back. It was June 20th, 2017. Go to archive.org. You could see election night of those. In fact, I'll actually post a link. This is actually one of the. This is actually one of the browsers I had open, but that one, that special election also, as far as I could tell, local news coverage actually had election night results at the bottom. So, so that was actually pretty interesting. But like I said, these state legislative special elections don't get any coverage. So you go back, I've done election night coverages throughout 2018 of various special elections from many different states. But as I was saying, those elections, we got the primaries for those states, plus the general election for 2019, and plus any other special election that may pop up. So 2019 elections, I'm going to look very forward to those. And all of you who watched this live and the video, you can also look forward to those as well. So that out of the way, let's talk about the results of 2018. Now, I made a video on the state of the races, I believe, in September, and I've actually been active on the site Predict It in the in the discussion boards on that site. It's a political betting site. My final prediction for the Senate was a 50-50 split. Democrats would hold all of their seats aside from North Dakota, as well as gain Arizona and Nevada for a 50-50 tied Senate. So they'd have a net gain of 1. Technically a net gain of 2 because of the Alabama Senate seat. I was completely wrong on that. On that prediction. The final results, the Democrats lost North Dakota, no big surprise. Missouri was a bit of a toss-up. I had it in McCaskill's favor because the polling showed a tight. The reputable polling that wasn't from Republican pollsters showed McCaskill leading, and so I said because it's a Democratic wave year, I expect McCaskill to pull it out. But I wouldn't be surprised if it went the other way. The Indiana Senate race I had as likely Democrat because the polling, almost all the polling was in Donnelly's favor. And that race shocked me. But I actually thought to myself, because Donnelly decided to, I guess I'll talk about this now, Donnelly decided to start to attack progressive Democrats. The people who, in Indiana, aside from, I think, a state auditor race, as well as the Indiana Senate race, those were the only two statewide races. And there were no competitive House districts. So Democrats who really, the progressive Democrats who don't like Donnelly because he's a conservative Democrat, were going to begrudgingly vote for Donnelly. And the polling showed a lot of the, you go back and look at all the polls, Donnelly led in a majority of them, especially at the very end. And progressive Democrats were going to begrudgingly vote for Donnelly. but Donnelly decided to, for some dumb reason, attack them. And with no competitive House races, no other competitive statewide race, those progressive Democrats decided to tell Donnelly to screw off, and they either stayed home or voted for Braun out of spite. And I said, and that's my theory on why Donnelly ended up losing. I was shocked on that night, because again, the polling showed Donnelly winning. But I had said before Election Day that if Donnelly does lose, then it'll be because of this. But I didn't because of that, because he attacked progressive Democrats. But at the same time, I didn't expect him to lose because of the polling. So that race surprised me. Florida, that one shocked me. I had it as likely Nelson because as well as the governorships, I expected the Dems to pick up the Florida governorship and Bill Nelson to hold on. I was shocked because I had said the reason why I thought Nelson would win is because Florida, it's evenly divided. It's a Democratic wave year, so Republicans aren't likely to turn out at the same rate as Democrats are because of the complacency. And that was my theory. On election night, I was dead wrong about Florida, as I should have expected, because it's Florida. Florida is not known for being consistent and holding up people's dreams. I should have known, wait a second, this is Florida. Something tells me that Florida is going to pull the rug from under us, and I should have known that going into the night. The polling at the governorship, Andrew Gillum led in all of the polling. Bill Nelson at the very end led in all the polling. And looking back at it, the reason why Nelson and Gillum lost was because my theory of Republicans not turning out was wrong. Republicans turned, and to give credit to Donald Trump, he energized the base where it mattered. He turned out Republicans. They didn't get complacent, and Nelson, unfortunately, barely lost re-election. And there's actually another reason why Nelson likely lost, which I'll get into in a possibly separate video. But Republicans just turned out more than Democrats did, and that could be the same thing for Missouri and Indiana. Republicans were not supposed to turn out as much as Democrats were, but they did, and that was the reason. Because my thesis on elections are you can win anywhere as long as you turn out the base. In 2008, the Democrats who were neck and neck in the Georgia Senate race, Saxby Chambliss against Jim Martin. Neck and neck, that race went to a runoff because no candidate received 50%. If the Democrats turned out the same amount they did in the back on election night in November, they would have won that Senate race in the runoff in 2008. So elections are all about turnout, who can turn out more. And the thesis for midterm years are that Democrats this year were supposed to turn out a lot. And they did. They did. They turned out more than in previous midterm years in 2010 and 2014. But the problem is that Republicans did the same, something they weren't expected to do. And I think the stream cut out, but but going back to what I was saying, Republicans turned out at more than they were expected to. And that's probably why Nelson, and that's one of the big reasons why Nelson and Andrew Gillum lost, which is very unfortunate. Now, Democrats did pick up Arizona and Nevada, which is good. They narrowed down their margins. So Republicans, in the media, they say Republicans picked up 2 seats. In reality, they only had a net gain of 1 seat, because at the beginning of 2017, they had 52 to 48. Democrats won Nevada and Arizona as well as Alabama, while losing Florida, North Dakota, Missouri, and Indiana. So technically, Republicans only had a net gain of one, 52 from at the beginning of 2017 to 53 starting in 2019. But and just talking about North Dakota throughout 2017 and very very early of 2018, North Dakota was rated as lean Dem by the pollsters because the only big name Republican candidate that would run against Heitkamp was was just a state senator who had a lot of problems. But once Kevin Kramer, the representative from North Dakota in the United States House, once he decided he decided he wasn't going to run, but then he decided again that okay, he will run. Once he decided to get into the race, that's pretty much when Heidi Heitkamp's chances kind of went down into the negatives, basically. So once he got into the race, North Dakota was always going to be very hard, and it was very likely that Heidi Heitkamp would lose, and it turned out to be the case. So yeah, those were basically that's a reflection of the 2018 results. What I plan to do is I plan to go more into depth in kind of videos detailing on an analysis of said races in the states and so I probably plan to do that. I'll probably have one on Montana out later sometime this week about the Montana Senate race because I'm going to love to talk about a lot. But so yeah, look out for videos on those such as Florida, Iowa, Montana. I'm gonna have probably gonna have videos about those in the near future, probably before the end of this year. But so looking back at 2018, that's out of the way. What I want to talk about, as you see in the title, rebranding. What I plan to do with the channel is my channel name right now is called The Independent, and starting in 2019, what I plan to do is rebrand the channel as The Election Center. Because first of all, the Independent name is kind of associated with some very interesting news sites, so I don't want to get confused with that. And plus, I think calling the channel The Election Center will kind of get across the point of the channel. This is a channel where election coverage is. If you want to see election coverage of special elections, the Election Center, the channel, what I plan to rename it as, that is the channel to go to. So yeah, I plan to rebrand the channel in 2019 as the Election Center, so keep in mind for that. In the description, you'll see a link to my Twitter, so go follow me there if you want to see what I'm currently up to, what I'm tweeting. I have a Patreon. I haven't really used it, but if you want to just give like $1 on that Patreon, sorry, in 2019 I'm also gonna have to balance my coverage with college, so and I don't work a job, so you just want to give $1, then I appreciate that a lot. But yeah, so that's basically the rebranding out of the way. What I wanted to finally talk about was where I've been for the past month and a half, because there are a lot of special elections and runoffs in December that I didn't cover. The reason why I wasn't able to cover those is because throughout November and the greater half of December, I suffered from a sciatic nerve pain in my leg, which basically bedridden me for basically the entire month of November, starting the day after Election Day to just a couple weeks ago. And I couldn't even sit down. Even as I was getting better, I couldn't sit down. And because I couldn't sit down at my computer to cover the special elections and runoff elections in Georgia and Louisiana. So that was a little unfortunate. I couldn't cover the runoff in Mississippi as I had wanted to. So that was a little disappointing. But that's also basically what happened. I am feeling much better, as you can tell right now. I'm able to sit down now at my computer. So that's basically just a little update on where I was for the past month and a half. And with that, I think that basically covers all I wanted to talk about. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I think I should mention. I think I got all the things I want to talk about across, but yeah. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed throughout the year and who has watched my very crappy content. I consider myself kind of my content a little crappy-ish, but I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for deciding to watch my stuff. Um, I also want to thank Ethan from Let's Talk Elections. A bunch of my channel exposure was because of him, because we had covered for the Ohio special election and the primaries on that day. So I thank him for that as well. Go to his YouTube channel, Let's Talk Elections. But yeah, thank you to everyone who has watched me, everyone who has watched this video live. Like I said, I plan to have analysis videos of the different races. I plan to do those. I might get around to them. I might not, depend upon real life stuff. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I look forward to where this channel goes in 2019. Thank you.